Picture this moment. You're sitting across a dinner table from a monster, an actual monster, not a man in a costume, not a metaphor, a creature with the body of a serpent, an elephant's trunk hanging from its face, boar's tusks jutting from its mouth, and claws that could rip you apart. You're trapped in its castle. You can't leave. You're completely alone except for invisible servants whose hands you can feel but never see. You've been here for weeks, maybe months. Time moves strangely in this place. Every evening, you sit at opposite ends of this long table. You eat, you talk. The monster is intelligent, surprisingly so. It discusses philosophy, literature, music. In conversation, you almost forget what it looks like. Almost. Because every time you look up, there it is. That hideous face, those terrible yellow eyes watching you. That wrong, impossible body that makes every instinct scream at you to run. And then, at the end of every meal, the monster stands. It moves toward you with that serpentine grace. And it asks you the same question it asks every single night. Will you marry me? What do you say? Remember, you're a prisoner here. This creature has complete power over you. It could kill you in an instant if it wanted to. You're alone, isolated, with no one to help you, no way to escape. But the monster has never hurt you, never touched you, never forced itself on you. It's been kind in its way, generous. It's given you everything you could want, except freedom. Every night it asks, will you marry me? Every night you answer, no. And every night, the monster walks away. You hear it roaring somewhere deep in the castle, a sound of such profound loneliness that it makes your chest ache. But you can't say yes. How could you? It's a monster, isn't it? This is not the Disney version of Beauty and the Beast that you grew up with. This isn't Belle in her yellow ball gown dancing with a prince in furry clothing. This isn't singing teacups and friendly candelabras and a curse broken by true love's kiss. This is the original 1740 tale written by Gabrielle-Suzanne Barbot de Villeneuve, a 187-page Gothic horror novella that has been almost completely forgotten, buried under centuries of sanitized retellings. And tonight, I'm going to tell you what really happened in that castle. I'm going to tell you about the invisible servants who whispered in the darkness, about the locked room Beauty was forbidden to enter, about the magic mirror that showed her family back home, about the mysterious prince who visited Beauty in her dreams every night, and how he was connected to the beast in ways she couldn't imagine. I'm going to tell you about Beauty's sisters, cruel, jealous, manipulative, and the absolutely horrifying punishment they received. Hint, they're still experiencing it right now, frozen in stone, conscious, watching, unable to move or speak or die. I'm going to tell you about the rose garden where Beauty's father made his fatal mistake, about the bargain he struck to save his life, about the beast's warning, if you leave and don't return, I will die. And I'm going to tell you about the night Beauty broke her promise, about finding the beast collapsed in the rose garden, dying, the entire castle going dark around him, about her realization, too late, always too late, of what she'd lost, about what she said to him as he lay dying in her arms. But most importantly, I'm going to tell you why this story exists, because Beauty and the Beast isn't a love story. It's a survival guide, It was written for young women in 18th century France who were about to be married off to strangers, often much older men they'd never met, men they found frightening or repulsive. Women who had no choice, no escape, no power. The story told them, you're going to end up in a castle with a monster. Learn to survive. Look for kindness where you can find it. Maybe, your monster will turn out to be a prince underneath. But what if he doesn't? What if the beast stays a beast? What if there's no transformation coming? That's the question the original story actually asks. That's the horror hiding beneath the fairy tale. In 1740, Gabrielle-Suzanne Barbot de Villeneuve wrote a nightmare disguised as a romance. She filled it with Gothic atmosphere, psychological terror, invisible spirits, and a creature so hideous that looking at it made the heroine physically sick. Then, 16 years later, another writer cut it down to 1/8 its length, removed all the darkness, simplified it for children, and created the version we know today. But the original remains, stranger, darker, more disturbing. And tonight, you're going to experience it. Before we enter that haunted castle, if you believe the darkest versions of our most beloved fairy tales deserve to be told, if you want to understand the nightmares our ancestors actually told each other before we sanitize them, subscribe to the Midnight Archives and hit that like button. Your support allows us to keep uncovering these forgotten horrors. Because here's what you need to understand. Every night, for months, the beast asked Beauty to marry him. Every night, she said no, until the night she said yes. And that's when everything changed. That's when the real horror began. Tonight, we're going to find out what happens when you agree to marry a monster. When the curse breaks, when the castle transforms, when the invisible servants become visible, and you realize what they really were. When you discover that your dream prince and the beast were the same person all along. When your sisters, the ones who betrayed you, who manipulated you, who tried to get you killed, receive a punishment so cruel that it makes you question whether the good fairy is really good at all. We're going to explore a castle that shouldn't exist. Meet a creature that defies nature. Watch a girl choose between her freedom and a monster's life. Witness a transformation that will make you question everything you thought you knew about this story. This is Beauty and the Beast, as it was originally written. This is the version they didn't want you to know about. This is the nightmare beneath the fairy tale. The beast is waiting in his castle. The roses are blooming in winter. And Beauty must answer a question that has no good answer. Will you marry me? What would you say? Welcome to the Midnight Archives. Our story begins in a great city in France, in the early 18th century, in a time of powdered wigs and gilded carriages and rigid social hierarchy. There lived a merchant, a wealthy man, one of the richest in the city. His ships sailed to the East Indies, to the Americas, to every corner of the known world. They returned laden with silk and spices, with jewels and rare goods that made him richer with each voyage. He had 6 children, 3 sons, strong, educated young men who helped manage the business, and 3 daughters. The 2 eldest daughters were everything 18th century society valued in young women of wealth. They were beautiful, fashionable, obsessed with the latest Paris trends. They attended every ball, every theatre performance, every social event of importance. They wore gowns that cost more than most families earned in a year. They spent their days visiting with other wealthy families, gossiping, planning their futures. They had grand ambitions, these sisters. They wouldn't marry mere merchants or even wealthy bourgeoisie. No, they wanted nobility. They wanted titles. They wanted to be duchesses, countesses, to move in royal circles. Suitors came constantly, rich merchants' sons, prosperous businessmen, even some minor nobles. But the elder sisters rejected them all with contempt. Marry a merchant? How vulgar. Marry someone without a title? I'd rather die. They were waiting for princes who would never come. The youngest daughter was different. Her name was Beauty, and she was beautiful. More beautiful than her sisters, though she never seemed to notice or care. She was quiet, thoughtful, gentle. While her sisters attended balls and flirted with every man in sight, Beauty stayed home and read. She had a library, books on philosophy, history, literature. She read Shakespeare and Molière, studied ancient Greek, played the harpsichord beautifully. She was everything her sisters were not: educated, humble, kind. And like her sisters, Beauty had suitors, many suitors, men of wealth and status who saw in her not just beauty, but intelligence and grace. But Beauty refused them all. "I'm too young to marry," she'd say politely. "I want to stay with my father and continue my education." Her sisters mocked her relentlessly for this. "Still reading your boring books, Beauty? No wonder you can't catch a husband. She thinks she's better than us because she reads philosophy, as if that matters when choosing a husband. She'll end up an old maid, mark my words, too proud to marry the men who want her." Beauty endured their mockery in silence. She loved her sisters despite their cruelty. She loved her father and brothers. She was content with her life of books and music and quiet contemplation. And then, in a single day, everything changed. News arrived from the harbor. The merchant ships, all of them, had been lost at sea. Some sank in storms. Some were captured by pirates. Some simply vanished, swallowed by the ocean. Every single vessel, every cargo, the entire fortune, gone. In one catastrophic day, the merchant went from being one of the wealthiest men in the city to being destitute. Worse than destitute, he was in debt. The ships had been insured, but the insurance companies refused to pay, claiming various technicalities and exceptions. Creditors descended like vultures. They seized the merchant's house, his warehouses, his goods. Everything valuable was taken to pay debts. The family was left with almost nothing. The merchant managed to salvage only one asset, a small cottage he owned in the countryside, far from the city. A tiny, crude place he'd once used for hunting trips. It was remote, isolated, surrounded by forest. They had no choice. They had to leave the city, leave their life of luxury, and move to this cottage to survive. The elder sisters were hysterical. "Live in the countryside? Like peasants. I won't do it. We'll be ruined socially. No one will want to marry us if we're poor. This is a nightmare. How can this be happening?" But the merchant was firm. "It's this or the streets. We're going." So the family packed what few belongings they had left, mostly clothing, some books, and they made the journey to the cottage. The cottage was worse than they'd imagined. It was small, barely enough rooms for all of them. The roof leaked when it rained. The windows were drafty. There was no staff, no servants. They'd have to do everything themselves. For the elder sisters, this was the end of the world. They'd never worked a day in their lives. Never cooked, never cleaned, never done any physical labor. Their soft hands had only ever held fans and teacups and dance cards. Now they were expected to scrub floors, to cook meals, to do laundry. They refused. "I'm not a servant," the eldest declared. "I won't demean myself with manual labor." "We're ladies of quality," the second added. "This is beneath us." So they spent their days lying in bed, crying, complaining about their fate, reminiscing about their former life of luxury. The brothers had to work the land. They'd never farmed before, but they learned. They planted vegetables, tended a small orchard, repaired the cottage as best they could. It was hard, exhausting work, but they did it without complaint. And Beauty did everything else. She woke before dawn to light the fire, to prepare breakfast. She cleaned the cottage, swept the floors, washed the dishes. She did the laundry, hauling water from the well, scrubbing clothes until her hands were raw, hanging them to dry. She cooked all the meals. She mended everyone's clothing. She tended the small garden of herbs and vegetables near the cottage. She helped her brothers when they needed it. She worked from dawn until long after dark, every single day, without rest. And she never complained, not once. Her sisters, meanwhile, would emerge from their shared bedroom around noon, complain about the simple food Beauty had prepared, criticize her cooking or cleaning, and then return to bed to cry about their lost status. "If only we'd married when we had the chance," the eldest would lament. "Now, no one will want us. We're ruined. This is all Father's fault." He should have been more careful with his business. They blamed everyone but themselves, and they resented Beauty most of all, because Beauty was adapting. Beauty was surviving. Beauty remained gentle and kind, despite the hardship, and that made them hate her even more. "Look at her," they'd whisper, "scrubbing floors like a common maid. She's forgotten she was born a lady. She's probably happy we're poor. Now she can pretend to be a humble peasant girl from her precious books. I always knew she was beneath us." Beauty heard these whispers, but said nothing. She understood her sisters were suffering. They'd lost everything they valued, their status, their prospects, their future. Of course they were angry and bitter. Beauty had lost those things too. But she'd never valued them the way her sisters had. She still had her books, the few she'd been able to bring. She still had her family. She was still alive, still healthy. And she found something unexpected in the countryside. Peace. The forest was beautiful. The silence was restful. The simple life, though hard, had a rhythm to it that she found satisfying. She missed conversations with educated people, missed concerts and libraries. But she didn't miss the artificial social world of the city, the constant judgment, the marriage market. Here, she could just be Beauty, just be herself. 2 years passed this way. 2 years of hard work, of poverty, of isolation. The elder sisters grew more bitter with each passing month. The brothers grew stronger, more capable. The father grew older, more worn, haunted by the loss of everything he'd built. And Beauty remained the heart of the household, the one who kept everything functioning, who maintained hope when everyone else had given up. And then, one autumn day, news arrived that would change everything. A letter came from the city. One of the merchant's ships, just one, had not been lost after all. It had been delayed, caught in storms, forced to harbor in distant ports. But it had survived. and it had just docked in the city with its cargo intact. The merchant read the letter with shaking hands. "This could save us," he said. "If the cargo is valuable enough, if I can sell it quickly, we might be able to recover some of our fortune, at least enough to move back to the city, to give you girls a chance at proper marriages again." The elder sisters, for the first time in 2 years, showed genuine excitement. "We can leave this horrible place. We can return to society. Finally, things will return to normal." They immediately began planning what they'd demand their father buy them in the city. "I want 3 new gowns," the eldest declared. "The latest Paris fashion, silk and lace." "I want jewels," the second said. "Sapphires to match my eyes, and pearls, lots of pearls." They made long lists of demands. Expensive clothes, jewelry, perfumes, accessories. Everything they'd been denied for 2 years. The merchant listened patiently, though he knew the cargo would likely be barely enough to pay his remaining debts, let alone buy luxuries. But he didn't have the heart to crush their hopes. He turned to Beauty. "And you, my dear, what would you like me to bring you?" Beauty looked up from the bread she was kneading. She thought for a moment. "Just a rose, father." The merchant blinked. "A rose?" "Yes, just one rose. There are no roses in the countryside here. The climate is wrong, or the soil, or something. I haven't seen a rose in 2 years. I'd like to see one again." Her sisters burst out laughing. "A rose? That's all you want?" How typical of Beauty to ask for something so simple and common. She's trying to make us look greedy by comparison. How manipulative. Beauty shook her head. "I'm not trying to make anyone look bad. I just want a rose, that's all." The merchant kissed his daughter's forehead. "A rose it is. I'll bring you the most beautiful rose I can find." He prepared for his journey. The brothers helped him ready the old horse, half lame but still capable of making the journey. He packed simple provisions and set out for the city, hope and anxiety warring in his heart. The journey took several days. When he finally reached the city and made his way to the harbor, his heart sank. The ship was there. The cargo was intact. But his creditors had gotten there first. They'd seized everything. Every bolt of silk, every crate of spices, every valuable good. Legal documents were produced, showing the merchant still owed enormous debts. The cargo was taken as partial payment. The merchant received nothing, not a single coin. He'd made the journey for nothing. Devastated, broken, he began the long journey home. He'd have to tell his family that there was no salvation coming. They were still poor. They would remain in that cottage, perhaps forever. The weight of his failure crushed him. The return journey was slow and miserable. Halfway home, as dusk fell and clouds gathered, a storm rolled in. Snow began to fall, heavy, thick snow that quickly covered the roads. The wind picked up, howling through the trees. The temperature plummeted. The merchant was lost. He'd taken a wrong turn somewhere, gotten turned around in the storm. Nothing looked familiar. The road, what little he could see of it under the snow, led deeper into the forest, away from any town or village. Night fell. The storm worsened. The merchant was freezing, exhausted. His horse was struggling through the drifts. He was going to die out here. He was certain of it. He'd freeze to death in this forest, and his family would never know what happened to him. And then, through the swirling snow, he saw light. The merchant urged his horse toward the light. As he got closer, his eyes widened in disbelief. It was a castle. An enormous, magnificent castle stood in a clearing in the forest. Every window blazed with light. The architecture was elegant, beautiful, perfectly maintained. A broad path led to the main entrance, and somehow, impossibly, that path was clear of snow. The merchant had traveled these woods before, years ago, when he'd first bought the cottage. He'd never seen a castle here, never even heard rumors of one. But here it stood, brilliant and welcoming in the darkness. He had no choice. He was dying of cold. He rode toward the castle. As he approached, the massive front doors swung open by themselves. No servants, no guards. The doors simply opened, as if welcoming him. The merchant dismounted on shaking legs. He looked around for someone, anyone, to ask permission to enter, but the courtyard was empty. "Hello?" he called. His voice was weak, hoarse from the cold. "Is anyone here?" "I'm lost, freezing. I need help." No answer, just the wind and snow. But from inside the open doors came warmth, light, the promise of safety. The merchant stumbled inside. The entry hall was magnificent. Marble floors, painted ceilings, elaborate chandeliers blazing with hundreds of candles, tapestries on the walls, furniture of the finest quality. Everything spoke of enormous wealth and impeccable taste. But no people, no servants, no one. "Hello?" the merchant called again, louder. "Is anyone home?" The door was open. Still no answer. But somewhere deeper in the castle, he heard music. A harpsichord playing a gentle melody. The merchant followed the sound, down a corridor, past more empty, lavishly furnished rooms. The music grew louder, and then he found its source. A dining room, a long table set for one, laden with food, roasted meat, fresh bread, fruit, vegetables, wine. And at the far end of the room, a harpsichord played itself. The keys moved up and down, the melody continuing, but no one sat at the bench. The merchant froze. Magic. This was magic. Dark magic, probably. He should leave, should run, But he was so cold, so hungry, and the fire in the massive fireplace was so warm. A voice spoke, not from any direction. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Eat," it said. It wasn't male or female, young or old. It just was. "You are welcome here. Eat and rest." The merchant looked around wildly. "Who are you? Where are you?" "Eat," the voice repeated. "No harm will come to you." The merchant's stomach growled painfully. He hadn't eaten since morning. The food smelled incredible. Slowly, carefully, he approached the table and sat down. Immediately, invisible hands began to serve him. He couldn't see them, couldn't see anything, but he felt them. Felt a hand pour wine into his glass. Felt another cut meat and place it on his plate. It was the most disturbing thing he'd ever experienced, but he was too hungry to refuse. He ate, and the food was delicious, better than anything he'd eaten even in his wealthy days. Perfectly prepared, perfectly seasoned. As he ate, he heard whispers, voices all around him, too quiet to make out words, like dozens of people whispering in a language he couldn't quite understand. When he finished eating, one of the invisible servants, he assumed it was a servant though he couldn't know, led him upstairs. He felt a hand on his arm, gently guiding him. through corridors, up staircases, to a bedroom. The room was ready for him, fire burning in the fireplace, bed made with fine linens, nightclothes laid out. The merchant undressed and climbed into bed. It was the most comfortable bed he'd slept in since losing his fortune. But he barely slept. He lay awake in the darkness, listening to the whispers in the walls, wondering what kind of place he'd stumbled into. Morning came. Sunlight streamed through the windows. The storm had passed. The merchant woke to find new clothes laid out for him. Not his old, travel-stained clothes, but new ones. Fine quality, perfectly sized for him. He dressed and went downstairs. In the dining room, breakfast was waiting. Fresh bread, butter, jam, hot chocolate, all served by invisible hands. He ate quickly, eager to leave this strange place. Magical or not, hospitable or not, it unnerved him deeply. He went to the courtyard. His horse was there, groomed and fed, looking better than it had in months. His saddlebags had been refilled with food and supplies. The merchant mounted his horse, ready to leave. But as he was about to ride through the gates, he paused. He remembered Beauty's request. A rose. And there, adjacent to the courtyard, was a garden. Despite it being winter, despite the snow on the ground everywhere else, this garden was in full bloom. Roses of every color, red, white, pink, yellow, covered the bushes. The air was thick with their perfume. The merchant stared. It was impossible. Roses didn't bloom in winter. Roses certainly didn't bloom in a snowstorm. But here they were. Beautiful, perfect roses. He dismounted and walked into the garden. Surely whoever owned this castle wouldn't mind him taking just one rose. After all, they'd fed him, housed him, given him new clothes. One rose seemed a small thing. He reached out and plucked a single red rose. The stem came free easily, as if it wanted to be picked. And then he heard it. A roar, like thunder and earthquakes and the screams of 1,000 animals all at once. The merchant whirled around, and there, standing in the entrance to the garden, was the beast. The creature standing before the merchant was nightmare-made flesh. It had the body of a massive serpent, coiled and muscular, covered in scales that gleamed like oil. But from that serpent body rose a torso that was almost human. Almost, but wrong in every detail. The arms were too long, ending in claws like a lion's. The chest was barrel-shaped and covered in thick fur. And the head. God, the head. It was enormous, with a trunk like an elephant's hanging from where a nose should be. Tusks jutted from a mouth filled with fangs. The eyes were yellow and slitted like a reptile's, but filled with terrible intelligence. Horns curved back from the skull. The whole face was a patchwork of scales, fur, and skin that looked diseased. The merchant had never seen anything so hideous, so unnatural, so wrong. The beast moved toward him with fluid, impossible grace. When it spoke, its voice was like stones grinding together, deep and resonant, and filled with rage. "I saved your life." The merchant stumbled backward, dropping the rose. I'm sorry. I gave you shelter from the storm. I gave you food, clothing, a place to rest. I asked nothing in return. The beast loomed over him, blocking out the sun. And you repay my hospitality by stealing from me. It's just a flower. Just one rose. I didn't think. You didn't think. The beast's laugh was horrible. You enter a magical castle. You're served by invisible spirits. You see roses blooming in winter, and you didn't think magic might be involved. You didn't think there might be consequences. The merchant fell to his knees. Please, I'm sorry. I'll put it back. I'll pay you. I'll do anything. The beast leaned down, its face inches from the merchant's. The merchant could smell its breath, sulfur and decay. You will die for this, the beast said simply. That is the price for stealing from me. No, please, I have children, a family who depends on me. I don't care. Please. The merchant was weeping now, trembling. The rose wasn't even for me. It was for my daughter. She asked me to bring her a rose. Just a rose, the only thing she wanted. I was only trying to make her happy. The beast pulled back slightly. Something shifted in its terrible eyes. Your daughter, it said slowly. Tell me about this daughter. The merchant, sensing a slim chance at survival, babbled desperately. Her name is Beauty. She's young, kind, good. She's taken care of the family since we lost our fortune. She works harder than anyone I've ever known, never complains, never asks for anything. All she wanted was a single rose. I was just trying to give her that one small thing. The beast was silent for a long moment, studying the merchant with those horrible yellow eyes. Then it spoke. I will make you an offer. Anything, anything. Return home. Tell your daughter what happened. If she is willing to come here in your place, to give her life for yours, then you will go free. The merchant's blood ran cold. You want me to send my daughter to die? I want you to give her a choice, the beast said. If she truly is as good and loving as you claim, perhaps she will come willingly. But if none of your daughters will come, the beast's claws extended slightly, then you will return here yourself. You have 3 months. If no daughter comes by then, I will come for you. And if she does come, if Beauty comes here? The beast turned away. That is between her and me. The merchant wanted to refuse, wanted to say he'd never sacrifice his daughter, but he was terrified, and the beast was already walking away. Your horse is ready, the beast called over its shoulder. In your saddlebags, you'll find gold. Enough to restore some of your fortune. Consider it payment for your daughter's life, or payment for your own, if you choose to return. The beast disappeared into the castle, moving with that unsettling serpentine grace. The merchant stood alone in the rose garden, the dropped rose at his feet, his whole body shaking. He walked on numb legs to his horse. The saddlebags were indeed heavy with gold, enough to change his family's life, enough to move back to the city, to restore their status. Blood money, the price of his daughter. The merchant mounted his horse and rode away from the castle. As soon as he passed through the gates, he looked back. The castle was gone. Nothing but forest, as if it had never existed. But the gold was still in his saddlebags, and he could still smell roses. The merchant rode home in a daze. The gold weighed heavily in his bags, and even more heavily on his conscience. When he finally reached the cottage, his family rushed out to greet him. Father, you're home! Did you get the cargo? Are we rich again? What did you bring us? The merchant dismounted slowly. His face was ashen, his hands trembling. Father! Beauty stepped forward, concerned. Are you ill? He looked at his youngest daughter, so beautiful. so kind, so good, and his heart broke. "I need to tell you something," he said. "All of you." Inside, they gathered in the cottage's small main room. The merchant sat heavily in his chair and told them everything. The lost cargo, the storm, the castle that appeared from nowhere, the invisible servants, the rose he'd picked, and the beast. He described the creature in detail: the serpent body, the elephant trunk, the tusks and claws and horrible face. He told them about the beast's rage, the death sentence, the terrible bargain. "One of my daughters must go to the castle and give herself to the beast," he finished, "or I must return in 3 months to die." There was a long silence. Then the elder sisters exploded. "This is your fault, Beauty. You and your stupid rose. If you'd asked for something normal like we did, we could have been rich again. But no, you had to ask for a rose, and now father is going to die. How could you be so selfish?" Beauty listened to their accusations with a growing sense of calm. She stood up. "It is my fault," she said simply. "I asked for the rose. Therefore, I will go to the beast." "Beauty, no," her father started. "I will go," Beauty repeated firmly. "I won't let you die for my mistake, and I won't let my sisters suffer for something I caused." "You can't be serious," the eldest sister said. But there was relief in her voice. If Beauty went, the problem was solved. Their father would live, they'd have the gold, and Beauty would be gone. "I'm completely serious," Beauty said. "When do I need to leave?" Her father was weeping. "You don't have to do this. I'll go back. I'll face the beast myself." "You will not." Beauty knelt beside her father's chair and took his hand. "I'm young and strong. You're old and tired. You've suffered enough. Let me do this." Her brothers protested. They offered to go themselves, to fight the beast, to find some other solution. But Beauty was immovable. "The beast asked for a daughter." He made a bargain. "I'll honor it." That night, Beauty packed her few belongings. She had little: some clothes, her precious books. She looked around the tiny room she'd shared with her sisters for 2 years and wondered if she'd ever see it again. Probably not. The beast wanted someone to die in her father's place. She would likely be dead within days of arriving at the castle. But she found she wasn't as frightened as she thought she'd be. She'd made her peace with it. Better her than her father. Better to die knowing she'd saved him than to live knowing she'd let him go to his death. In the morning, Beauty and her father set out for the castle. The gold the beast had provided allowed them to hire a proper carriage this time. Beauty wore her best dress, not fine by her former standards, but the nicest thing she owned. Her sisters didn't come out to say goodbye. The journey took 2 days. Beauty and her father barely spoke. What was there to say? On the 3rd morning, as they traveled deep into the forest, the castle appeared. It was just as her father had described: magnificent, impossible, glowing with light even in daylight. As they approached, the gates swung open to admit them. The carriage rolled into the courtyard and stopped. The doors opened by themselves, and there, waiting on the steps, was the beast. Beauty stepped out of the carriage and looked at the creature her father had tried to describe. Her father's words hadn't done it justice. It was worse. So much worse. Her stomach lurched. Every instinct screamed at her to run. The thing before her was an abomination, a nightmare, something that shouldn't exist. But she forced herself to stand still, to not look away. The beast studied her with those terrible yellow eyes. Then it turned to her father. "You kept your word." "I'm impressed." The beast's voice was exactly as described, grinding stones and distant thunder. "Most men would have run." "I love my daughter," the merchant said, his voice breaking. "I couldn't let her come alone." "How touching." The beast's gaze returned to Beauty. "And you came willingly." Beauty found her voice, though it shook. "Yes, I caused this. I'll face the consequences." Something that might have been surprise flickered in the beast's eyes. "How noble. You're either very brave or very foolish." "Perhaps both," Beauty said. The beast laughed, that horrible grinding sound. "Perhaps. Come inside. We have much to discuss." The beast turned and walked into the castle. Beauty took a deep breath, kissed her father's cheek, and followed the monster inside. Her father called after her, weeping, but the doors closed between them. She heard the carriage leave. The beast must have ordered it away. Beauty was alone with the beast now. There was no going back. The beast led Beauty through corridor after corridor. The castle was even more magnificent inside than it appeared from outside. Every room they passed was lavishly decorated, filled with artwork and fine furniture. But every room was also empty. No servants, no people, no life except for the whispers. Beauty could hear them, soft voices speaking in languages she didn't understand, always just at the edge of hearing. Sometimes she'd feel a presence beside her, a brush of air like someone passing close by. But when she looked, there was nothing there. "Your rooms," the beast said, stopping before a set of ornate doors. "Everything you need is here. Everything you could want." The doors opened by themselves. Beauty stepped inside and gasped. The suite was enormous, a bedroom larger than the entire cottage she'd been living in, a sitting room with a fireplace and comfortable chairs, a dressing room with a wardrobe already full of beautiful gowns in her exact size, a bathroom with a tub that was already filled with steaming, scented water, and books. An entire wall of floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with hundreds of volumes. Beauty moved toward them in wonder, running her fingers along the spines. Philosophy, poetry, history, novels in French and English and Latin. Many books she'd read before, many more she'd only dreamed of reading. "The library is entirely at your disposal," the beast said, "as is the rest of the castle. You may go wherever you wish. Explore whatever rooms interest you. You have complete freedom here." Beauty turned to look at the creature. "Except the freedom to leave." "Except that," the beast acknowledged. "You are my prisoner, Beauty. Let's not pretend otherwise, but within these walls, you may do as you please." "Is there anything forbidden? Any rooms I shouldn't enter?" The beast hesitated. "There is one door. In the west wing, at the end of the longest corridor. It's locked. You must never attempt to open it." "What's inside?" "That doesn't concern you. Simply stay away from it." The beast moved toward the door. "I'll leave you to settle in. Dinner is at 9 o'clock. I'll expect you in the dining room. And if I refuse to come..." The beast paused in the doorway. "Then you'll go hungry." I won't force you to dine with me, Beauty, but I hope you will. The door closed behind the beast, and Beauty was alone. She sank into one of the chairs, her legs suddenly weak. She'd been holding herself together through sheer will, but now that she was alone, the terror crashed over her. She was trapped in a castle with a monster, a literal monster, something from nightmares. She'd seen the claws, the fangs, the wrong shape of its body. It could kill her in an instant if it chose to, and she couldn't leave. The bargain was made, her life for her father's. Beauty allowed herself to cry for a few minutes. Then she wiped her eyes, stood up, and looked around her prison. If she was going to die here, she might as well make use of the time she had left. And the beast had given her books. She spent the afternoon reading. Time passed strangely in the castle. Hours seemed to slip by in minutes. When a clock chimed 9 times, Beauty jumped. Dinner time. She should go. The beast had been clear about the invitation, and despite her fear, Beauty had been raised with manners. You didn't refuse dinner invitations, even from monsters. She found the dining room easily. The castle seemed to guide her, corridors opening before her, doors unlocking as she approached. The beast was already there, standing by a long table set for 2. The food looked and smelled incredible. Roasted meats, fresh vegetables, wine, elaborate desserts. "You came," the beast said. There was surprise in its voice. "I wasn't certain you would." "You invited me," Beauty said simply. It would have been rude to refuse. How charmingly civilized. "Please sit." Beauty sat at one end of the table. The beast sat at the other, as far from her as possible. Invisible hands began to serve them. Beauty felt dishes placed before her, wine poured into her glass, but saw no one doing it. They ate in silence for a while. Beauty forced herself to eat despite her roiling stomach. The food was delicious, but every bite felt like swallowing stones. Finally, the beast spoke. "You're afraid of me." It wasn't a question. Beauty considered lying, then decided honesty was better. "Yes, I would be too, if I were you." The beast picked at its food with those terrible claws. "I'm monstrous, hideous, frightening. I know what I am." "You're also intelligent," Beauty said carefully. "You speak well. You've been relatively kind, despite holding me prisoner." "Relatively kind." The beast laughed that grinding laugh. "I suppose that's the best I can hope for." They continued eating. Beauty found herself studying the beast more carefully. Yes, it was hideous. Yes, it was terrifying. But the way it moved was controlled, precise. The way it spoke was articulate. There was something almost human about it, despite the monstrous form. After dinner, as invisible servants cleared the dishes, the beast stood. "Beauty, I have a question for you." Beauty's heart raced. This was it. Whatever the beast wanted from her, this was the moment it would demand it. "Will you marry me?" Beauty stared at the creature in shock. "What?" "Will you marry me?" the beast repeated. "Will you be my wife?" No, I won't marry you." She'd expected anger, violence, but the beast only nodded sadly. "I understand. Good night, Beauty." The beast left the dining room, moving with that serpentine grace. Beauty heard its footsteps, or whatever the sound was that the beast made when it moved, fading down the corridor. She sat alone at the table, utterly confused. The beast wanted to marry her. That was what this was about. Not killing her, not eating her, not some dark magical ritual. Marriage. It made no sense. Beauty made her way back to her rooms. The castle guided her again, doors opening at the right moments. She prepared for bed, changed into a nightgown that had been laid out by invisible hands, and climbed into the enormous, comfortable bed. She lay awake for a long time, listening to the whispers in the walls, wondering what kind of nightmare she'd walked into. Beauty finally fell asleep near midnight, and immediately she began to dream. She was in a garden, not the rose garden where her father had been caught, but a different one. This garden was overgrown, wild, as if no one had tended it in years. Vines covered everything, flowers bloomed in chaotic profusion, and in the center of the garden stood a young man. He was beautiful. Not in the conventional way that people called beautiful, but genuinely, strikingly beautiful. Tall and well-built, with dark hair and kind eyes. He wore fine clothes, a prince's clothes, though something about them seemed old-fashioned from another era. He smiled when he saw her. "Beauty," he said. His voice was warm, gentle, nothing like the beast's grinding tones. "Finally, you're here." "Where am I?" Beauty looked around the dream garden. "Who are you?" "I'm someone who needs your help." The young man moved closer. "I'm trapped, Beauty. Imprisoned. Suffering. Trapped where? Closer than you think." He reached out as if to touch her face, but his hand passed through her like smoke. "I'm so close, but I can't reach you. Not while I'm like this. I don't understand. You will." The prince, she thought of him as a prince, though he'd never said what he was, smiled sadly. "Do not trust appearances, Beauty. Look beneath the surface. Nothing here is what it seems." "The beast. Forget the beast for now. Just know that I'm here. I'm watching over you. You're not alone." Beauty felt a strange warmth in her chest. This young man, this dream prince, made her feel safe in a way she hadn't felt since entering the castle. "Will I see you again?" she asked. "Every night," he promised. "I'll come to you every night in your dreams. It's the only way I can reach you." The dream began to fade. Beauty tried to hold on to it, tried to stay with the prince, but sleep pulled her under into deeper, dreamless darkness. She woke in the morning with tears on her cheeks. The dream had felt so real. More real than the castle, almost more real than the beast. Who was that young man? And what did he mean about being trapped? Beauty pushed the thoughts aside. She had more immediate concerns, like how to survive another day in this strange, haunted castle with a monster. The days developed a pattern. Beauty would wake to find breakfast laid out in her sitting room. Fresh bread, fruit, chocolate, always her favorite foods. Though she'd never told anyone what they were, she'd spend the day exploring the castle or reading. The library was even more extensive than the shelves in her room. Entire halls filled with books, organized in ways she couldn't quite understand. She'd pull a book from a shelf and find that it was exactly what she wanted to read, as if the library knew her thoughts. The castle was enormous. She could wander for hours and never see the same room twice. Music rooms with instruments that played themselves. Art galleries with paintings that seemed to move when she wasn't looking directly at them. Conservatories with impossible flowers blooming in perpetual summer. But no matter where she went, she never saw another living creature except the beast. Only the whispers, the invisible presences, the sense of being watched by unseen eyes. And always, in the back of her mind, she remembered the locked door in the West Wing, the one place she was forbidden to go. She was curious about it, terribly curious. What could be behind a locked door in a magical castle? What was the beast hiding? But she didn't try to open it. The beast had been clear, and Beauty kept her word. Every evening at 9, Beauty went to the dining room, and every evening the beast was there waiting. They would dine together, the beast at one end of the long table, Beauty at the other. At first, Beauty could barely look at the creature. Its appearance still made her stomach turn, still triggered every instinct to flee. But gradually, over days and weeks, she grew accustomed to it. Not comfortable, never comfortable, but accustomed. She could look at the beast without wanting to be sick. She could eat while in its presence, and they talked. The beast was remarkably well educated. Beauty had started thinking of the beast as he, knew literature, philosophy, history, music. He could discuss Shakespeare and Voltaire, could analyze poetry, could debate the nature of ethics and morality. In conversation, it was easy to forget what the beast looked like. His voice was still that grinding, unnatural sound, but the words, the thoughts behind them, were sophisticated and intelligent. "You've read Montaigne?" the beast asked one evening, noticing the book Beauty had brought to dinner. "I'm rereading his essays," Beauty said. "I find them comforting." Comforting? I would have said challenging. They're both. He questions everything, doubts everything, but he does it with such humor and humanity. It reminds me that uncertainty is part of being human. The beast was quiet for a moment. "Tell me, Beauty, do you consider me human?" Beauty looked at the creature across the table, at the serpent body and elephant trunk and terrible claws. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Your body isn't human, but your mind, your thoughts, your capacity for conversation, those seem human to me." An interesting answer. The beast seemed pleased. Most people would simply say no. Most people haven't dined with you every evening for weeks. They continued talking about Montaigne, about philosophy, about books. And by the end of dinner, Beauty realized she'd almost enjoyed herself. Almost. Then the beast stood, as he did every evening at the end of the meal, and Beauty braced herself, because she knew what was coming. "Beauty," the beast said, "will you marry me?" Every evening, the same question, every evening, asked in that grinding, terrible voice. "No," Beauty said, as gently as she could. "I won't marry you." The beast nodded, as he always did. He never argued, never pressed, never showed anger. "Good night, Beauty," he said, and left the dining room. Beauty heard him moving through the castle corridors. And sometimes, though she tried not to listen, she heard him roaring in the distance, a sound of such anguish and loneliness that it made her chest ache. But she couldn't marry him. She couldn't. No matter how intelligent he was, no matter how kind he'd been to her, she couldn't marry a monster. At night, in her dreams, the prince came to her. They would walk together in the overgrown garden, talking, laughing. He told her stories about his life, though the details were always vague, like trying to remember something from long ago. He asked about her day, listened to her talk about the books she'd read, the rooms she'd explored. He never mentioned the beast, and Beauty never asked why. She was falling in love with him, with this dream prince who existed only in her sleep. It was absurd, she knew. You couldn't love a dream. You couldn't build a life with someone who vanished when you woke up. But she couldn't help it. In a castle where the only other person she ever saw was a hideous monster, the Dream Prince was her one source of comfort and joy. And so the weeks passed. Beauty grew more comfortable in the castle, or as comfortable as a prisoner could be. She spent her days reading and exploring. She spent her evenings dining with the beast, enjoying his conversation while hating his appearance. She spent her nights with the Dream Prince, feeling a happiness she couldn't explain. The beast never touched her, never threatened her, never did anything to harm her. But every evening he asked the same question, "Will you marry me?" And every evening Beauty gave the same answer, "No." Until one day, everything changed. Beauty had been in the castle for 3 months when she discovered the full power of the magic mirror in her room. She'd been using it occasionally to check her reflection, to see that she was still herself, despite living in this impossible place. But one evening, feeling particularly lonely after dinner with the beast, she stared into the mirror and thought about her family. "I wish I could see them," she whispered, "just to know they're all right." The mirror's surface rippled like water, and then, instead of her reflection, Beauty saw her father. He was in the cottage, sitting in his chair by the fire, but he looked terrible, gaunt, pale, aged beyond his years. He sat unmoving, staring into the flames, and even through the mirror, Beauty could see the grief consuming him. He thought she was dead. Of course he did. She'd been gone for 3 months with no word. He believed he'd sent his youngest daughter to die, and that he'd never see her again. Beauty's heart broke. "Father," she whispered to the image, but he couldn't hear her, couldn't see her. The mirror only showed, it didn't connect. The image shifted, showing her brothers. They were working in the fields, looking healthier than before. The beast's gold had helped them recover financially, but their faces were drawn with sadness. Then the mirror showed her sisters. They were dressed in fine clothes again, attending a social gathering in town. The gold had allowed them to return to society. They were laughing, flirting with young men, enjoying themselves. They looked happy. They'd moved on. Beauty stared at her sisters laughing in the mirror, and something cold settled in her chest. They weren't grieving. They weren't even pretending to grieve. She'd sacrificed herself for the family, and her sisters had simply taken the opportunity to return to their old lives. She shouldn't have been surprised, but it hurt anyway. The image faded. The mirror showed her own reflection again, pale, sad, trapped. That night, Beauty couldn't sleep. She kept seeing her father's grief-stricken face. He was dying of sadness, just as surely as if the beast had killed him directly. She had to see him, had to let him know she was alive, was all right. In the morning, instead of spending the day in the library, Beauty sought out the beast. She found him in the conservatory, standing among the impossible blooming flowers. He looked almost peaceful there, less monstrous, surrounded by beauty. "Beast," she said softly. He turned, and those yellow eyes focused on her. "Beauty, you don't usually seek me out during the day. Is something wrong? I have a request, a favor to ask. Anything within my power." Beauty took a breath. "I want to visit my family, just for a week. My father is ill, dying, I think, from grief. I need to see him to let him know I'm alive." The beast went very still. "You want to leave? Just for a week. I'll come back, I promise. I'll return in 7 days. I just need to see my father." "If I let you go," the beast said slowly, "you'll never return." "Why would you? You'd be free of this place, free of me." "I give you my word," Beauty said firmly. "I'll return. 7 days, and I'll come back." The beast studied her for a long moment. Beauty could see something working behind those terrible eyes. Calculation, fear, hope. Finally, he spoke. "I'll allow it. But know this, Beauty. If you break your promise, if you don't return in exactly 7 days, I will die." "What?" "My life is bound to yours now, to your presence. If you leave and don't return, the magic that sustains me will fade. I'll die, Beauty, slowly and painfully, alone in this castle." It sounded like manipulation, like emotional blackmail. But Beauty saw the truth in the beast's eyes. He wasn't lying. This was real. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you bind yourself to me like that?" The beast turned away. "That's not something I can explain. Will you return, Beauty? Do I have your word?" "Yes, I'll return in 7 days, I swear it." The beast was silent for another long moment. Then he reached up and removed something from around his neck, a ring on a long chain. The ring was gold, set with a strange dark stone that seemed to swallow light. "Turn this ring on your finger 3 times, the beast said, handing it to her. "You'll be transported instantly to your family. When you're ready to return, turn it 3 times again. It will bring you back to the castle." Beauty took the ring. It was warm, as if it had absorbed the beast's body heat. 7 days, the beast said quietly. "No longer, Beauty. Please. 7 days," she promised. That night, Beauty packed a small bag with a few belongings. She put on her nicest dress, one of the gowns from the wardrobe in her room. She wanted to look healthy and happy when her father saw her, wanted to ease his grief. She slipped the beast's ring onto her finger, took a breath, and turned it 3 times. The world twisted, colors blurring together. Beauty felt like she was falling and flying at the same time. And then, she was standing in front of the cottage. It was early morning. Smoke rose from the chimney. Everything looked exactly as she remembered. Beauty walked to the door and knocked. Footsteps inside. The door opened. Her father stood there. He stared at her as if seeing a ghost. "Beauty," he whispered. "Hello, father." Her father let out a sound somewhere between a sob and a laugh. He pulled her into a crushing embrace, and Beauty felt his tears on her hair. "You're alive. You're alive. Oh God, you're alive." Her brothers appeared, drawn by the commotion. They crowded around her, touching her arms, her face, as if to confirm she was real. "How?" her father kept asking. "How are you here? Did you escape? Is the beast coming for you?" "No, nothing like that," Beauty assured him. "The beast let me come. He's been kind to me, father. I'm not harmed. Look at me. I'm well fed, healthy. He's treating me well." Her father looked at her expensive dress, her healthy color, the ring on her finger. "But why would he let you leave?" "I promised to return in 7 days. He trusts me to keep my word." At that moment, Beauty's sisters appeared in the doorway of their shared room. They stared at her, and Beauty saw a flash of something in their eyes, not relief or joy, something else, something ugly, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by false smiles. Beauty! Sister! You're home! They rushed forward to embrace her, and Beauty let them, even though their affection felt hollow. The family spent the day celebrating Beauty's return. Her father couldn't stop smiling, couldn't stop touching her shoulder or her hand, as if reassuring himself she was real. Beauty told them about the castle, carefully edited. She described the luxury, the books, the magical servants. She told them about dining with the beast every evening, about his intelligence and education. She didn't tell them about his nightly marriage proposals. She didn't tell them how hideous he was, how his appearance still sometimes made her sick. She didn't tell them about the dream prince. Her sisters listened with barely concealed jealousy. "You have a whole castle to yourself?" the eldest asked. "And magic mirrors and invisible servants," the second added. "And the beast just lets you do whatever you want?" "More or less," Beauty said. "He's been surprisingly kind." "How wonderful for you," the eldest said. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. That night, after their father and brothers had gone to bed, Beauty's sisters invited her to sit with them by the fire. "We've missed you so much," the eldest said, taking Beauty's hand. "We were so worried," the second added, taking her other hand. Beauty was touched. Perhaps her sisters had changed. Perhaps her sacrifice had made them appreciate her. "I've missed you too," Beauty said honestly. "You must tell us everything," the eldest said. "We want to hear all about the castle, the beast, everything." So Beauty told them more stories, late into the night. And her sisters listened, asked questions, expressed fascination and concern in all the right places. It felt good to be with them, to feel like they were sisters again, not enemies. "How long can you stay?" the second sister asked. 7 days. I have to return in 7 days. "Only 7 days?" The eldest looked disappointed. "That's hardly any time at all. I promised the beast." "But surely he wouldn't mind if you stayed a bit longer," the second pressed. 1 or 2 extra days? You've been gone for months. Your family deserves more than 7 days." "I gave my word," Beauty said firmly. 7 days. Her sisters exchanged a glance. Something passed between them that Beauty couldn't read. "Of course," the eldest said sweetly. "We understand. 7 days it is." The days passed quickly. Beauty spent them with her father mostly, talking, reading together, simply enjoying his presence. Her brothers were often out working, but when they were home, they treated her with warmth and affection. Her sisters, meanwhile, became increasingly attentive. They wanted to spend time with her, to talk, to be close. Beauty was pleased. She'd always wanted a good relationship with her sisters. On the 6th day, as Beauty was preparing to pack for her return journey the next morning, her sisters came to her room. "Beauty," the eldest said, her eyes red as if she'd been crying, "we need to ask you something." "What's wrong?" "Will you stay 1 more day?" The second sister's voice broke. "Just 1 more day. Please." Beauty was taken aback. "I told you. I have to return tomorrow. I promised." "We know, but..." The eldest dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. "We've grown so close again these past days. We've realized how much we missed you, how badly we treated you before. We want to make up for it. We want more time with you." "Just 1 more day," the second pleaded. "What's 1 day? Surely the beast will understand. Surely he won't mind 1 extra day with your family." Beauty hesitated. She'd been enjoying reconnecting with her sisters, and it was just 1 day. What harm could it do? Please, Beauty, the eldest said, fresh tears falling. Don't abandon us again so soon. I'm not abandoning you. It feels like you are. It feels like you care more about keeping a promise to a monster than staying with your family who loves you. Beauty felt guilt twist in her stomach. That's not fair. Please, both sisters said together. Please stay. Just one more day. Beauty looked at her sisters' tearful faces, at the apparent genuine emotion in their eyes. All right, she said finally. One more day. But then I have to go, no matter what. Her sisters hugged her, thanked her, told her how much it meant to them. And Beauty tried to ignore the small voice in her head that said she'd just made a terrible mistake. The 8th day passed. Beauty spent it with her sisters as they'd requested. They took her to town, showed her around, introduced her to people they knew. Everyone marveled at Beauty, at her expensive dress, her healthy appearance, her stories of the magical castle. She became something of a local celebrity, the girl who'd been taken by a beast and lived to tell about it. When evening came, Beauty said, Tomorrow morning, first thing, I'm returning to the castle. Of course, her sisters agreed. We understand. But on the 9th morning, when Beauty came downstairs ready to leave, her sisters met her with more tears. Please, they begged, just one more day. We're not ready to say goodbye. I already stayed an extra day, Beauty protested. What's one more? The beast has waited this long. He can wait a little longer. Against her better judgment, Beauty agreed. Day 9 became day 10. Day 10 became day 11. Each morning, Beauty would announce she was leaving. Each time, her sisters would beg her to stay just a little longer. And each time, Beauty, not wanting to seem cold, not wanting to hurt her sisters' feelings, not wanting to admit that she was also afraid to return, agreed. She told herself the beast would understand, that it was reasonable to spend a bit more time with her family, that surely a few extra days wouldn't matter. She tried not to think about the beast's warning, about what he'd said would happen if she didn't return. On the 10th night, Beauty had a dream, but it wasn't the usual dream with the handsome prince in the garden. This was a nightmare. She was in the rose garden at the castle. The roses were dying, petals brown and falling, stems withered. The whole garden looked dead. And in the center of the garden, she saw the beast. He was lying on the ground among the dead roses, not moving. His serpent body was coiled limply, his claws splayed out. His eyes were closed. He looked like he was dying. Beauty. The beast's voice was weak, barely a whisper. You broke your promise. Beauty tried to run to him, but her feet wouldn't move. She was frozen, forced to watch. I'm dying, the beast whispered. I told you, if you didn't return, I can't live without you. No, Beauty screamed. I'm coming back. I'm sorry. I'll come back right now. But the beast didn't respond. His breathing was shallow, fading. Beauty woke with a gasp, her heart pounding. It was just a dream, just a nightmare brought on by guilt. But it had felt so real. She looked at the window. Dawn was just breaking. The 11th day. 10 days since she'd left. 3 days past her promise. Beauty jumped out of bed. She grabbed the ring from where it lay on her nightstand, where she'd left it while staying with her family. She didn't pack, didn't say goodbye, didn't hesitate. She turned the ring 3 times. The world twisted, colors blurred, and Beauty prayed she wasn't too late. Beauty materialized in the courtyard of the castle. The sun was just rising, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. But something was wrong. The castle was dark. Every window that had always blazed with light was now black. The doors hung open, but no welcoming warmth emanated from inside. The whole place felt dead. "Beast!" Beauty called out. Her voice echoed in the empty courtyard. "Beast! I'm back! I'm sorry I'm late, but I'm here now." No answer, just silence and the whisper of wind through the towers. Beauty ran into the castle. The corridors were dark, the magical lights extinguished. No invisible servants moved through the halls. No whispers echoed from the walls. Everything that had made the castle alive was gone. "Beast!" Beauty ran from room to room, searching. The dining room, empty. The library, dark and cold. The conservatory. The flowers were wilting, dying. Panic seized her. Where was he? Then she remembered her dream. The rose garden. The beast lying among the dead roses. It had been a vision. A warning. Beauty ran through the castle toward the garden. Through corridors that no longer opened for her. Through doors she had to push open herself. The magic was fading, dying, just like everything else. She burst into the rose garden. And there he was. The beast lay in the center of the garden, exactly as in her dream, surrounded by roses that were brown and withered. His massive serpent body was coiled loosely, limply. His claws were stretched out, reaching for nothing. He wasn't moving. "No!" Beauty ran to him, fell to her knees beside his body. "Beast! Beast, wake up! I'm here. I came back." She touched his face, that horrible, monstrous face, with its elephant trunk and tusks. His skin was cold. Too cold. "Please," she sobbed. "Please don't be dead." "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I broke my promise. I should have come back when I said I would. Please, please wake up." The beast's eyes flickered open slightly. Those yellow reptilian eyes focused on her with difficulty. "Beauty." His voice was barely a whisper, that grinding sound now faint as distant thunder. "You came back. Of course I came back. I'm sorry I was late. I'm sorry, but I'm here now. Everything will be all right." "Too late." The beast's eyes started to close again. "You broke your promise." The magic fading. "I told you what would happen." "No! Stay with me. Don't close your eyes." Beauty grabbed his face, trying to keep him awake. "You can't die. I won't let you." "Why did you come back?" the beast whispered. "You were free. Why return?" "Because I..." Beauty stopped. Why had she come back? Because of a promise, out of obligation, out of guilt. Number. The truth hit her like a physical blow. "Because I love you," she whispered. The beast's eyes opened wider, shocked. "What?" "I love you." The words came easier now, flowing from some place deep inside her that she'd been ignoring. "I didn't realize it until now, until I thought you were dying. But I love you, beast. Not my dream prince, not some fantasy. You. I love you." "I'm a monster," the beast said weakly. hideous, horrible. How could you? I don't care what you look like. Beauty was crying now, tears falling onto the beast's face. Yes, you're hideous. Yes, looking at you sometimes makes me sick. But you're also kind, intelligent, gentle. You gave me freedom within my captivity. You asked me to marry you every night, but never forced me. You let me visit my family, even though you knew I might not return. She leaned down, her forehead touching his. You're a better man than most men I've known, monster or not. And I love you. I love you. And I should have said yes when you asked me to marry you. I should have said yes every night. Beauty, marry me, Beauty said fiercely. You asked me every night. Now I'm asking you. Marry me, beast. Don't die. Marry me and live. The beast stared at her. She could see the hope and disbelief warring in his eyes. You mean it? He whispered. You truly mean it? Yes, with all my heart. I'll marry you. I'll stay with you. Just please, please don't die. The beast's claw moved weakly, touching her hand. I love you, Beauty. I've loved you since the moment I saw you, even knowing you couldn't love me back, even knowing I was too monstrous to deserve you. You deserve everything, Beauty said, and she leaned down and kissed him. She kissed the beast's horrible mouth, touched her lips to those wrong, monstrous features. And she didn't care. She wasn't revolted. She felt only love and desperation and the need to keep him alive. The moment Beauty's lips touched the beast's, everything changed. Light exploded from the beast's body. Brilliant, white light that was almost painful to look at. Beauty fell backward, shielding her eyes. The ground shook. Thunder rolled across the sky, even though there were no clouds. The wind picked up, whipping through the garden with gale force. Beauty felt magic, pure, raw magic, washing over her in waves. The air crackled with it. The roses around them began to glow, their dead petals falling away to reveal new buds bursting into bloom. The beast's body was changing. The serpent coils unraveled, became legs, human legs. The scales fell away like water, revealing skin beneath. The claws retracted, became hands with fingers. The elephant trunk shrank, reformed into a human nose. The tusks dissolved. The horrible monstrous face rippled and shifted and became a man, a young man, handsome and whole, wearing fine clothes that had appeared from nowhere. He had dark hair and kind eyes, and a face that Beauty recognized immediately. The prince from her dreams. He was real. He'd been real all along. You, Beauty whispered. The prince, the beast, sat up slowly, looking at his hands in wonder. Human hands. He touched his face, his arms, his body, all human, all normal. The curse, he breathed. It's broken. I'm myself again. Beauty could only stare. You were the dream prince. The beast and the prince. You were the same person. Always, he said, looking at her with those same eyes that had looked out from the beast's monstrous face. The curse split me. Beast in body, human in spirit. My true form could only reach you in dreams, while my cursed form imprisoned you in waking. He stood, helped Beauty to her feet. But you loved me anyway. You loved the beast I'd become, That was the only thing that could break the curse. True love from someone who could see past the monster to the man inside. All around them, the castle was transforming. The darkness fled, replaced by brilliant light. The dead roses burst into vibrant bloom. The wilted flowers in the conservatory erupted with color. And throughout the castle, voices rang out, clear, joyful voices. No longer whispers, but real human speech. People appeared, dozens of them, materializing throughout the castle grounds. Servants in fine livery, guards in armor, ladies and gentlemen in court dress. All of them had been invisible, trapped by the curse that had transformed the prince into a beast. They were free now. All of them. A woman approached, beautiful, ageless, glowing with otherworldly light. She wore a gown that seemed woven from starlight, and her presence radiated power. Who? Beauty started. "I am the one who orchestrated this," the woman said. Her voice was like music. "I am what you would call a fairy. A good fairy, not like the one who cursed this poor prince." The prince bowed to her. "You were the one who helped me." "Who sent beauty to me?" "I did. Though the path was hers to walk." The fairy turned to Beauty. "You've proven yourself, child. Proven your goodness, your loyalty, your capacity for true love." "I don't understand," Beauty said. "Why? Why did you do this?" "Because you deserve better than the life you were given," the fairy said. "And because there's something you need to know." The fairy waved her hand. The air shimmered and images appeared, like looking through the magic mirror, but larger, clearer. Beauty saw a castle she didn't recognize, a king and queen, beautiful, regal, clearly powerful. "Your mother," the fairy said, pointing to the queen. Beauty's breath caught. "My mother died when I was born." "No, your adoptive mother, the merchant's wife, died when you were young. But your true mother was a fairy. And your father was a king." The images shifted, showing a baby being hidden, being given to a merchant and his wife for safekeeping. "You are a princess, Beauty, daughter of a fairy and a king. You were hidden with the merchant's family to protect you from those who would harm you, from dark fairies who envied your mother, from political enemies who would use you as a weapon." Beauty felt like the ground was tilting beneath her. I'm not the merchant's daughter. He raised you with love. He is your father in every way that matters, but by blood, by birth, you are royalty. You are one of us." The prince took Beauty's hand. "This is why you could break my curse. Only someone with fairy blood could do it. Only someone of pure heart and royal line could see past my monstrous form to the truth beneath." Beauty's mind was reeling. She was a princess. The merchant wasn't her real father. Her whole life had been a lie. "The merchant knows nothing of this," the fairy said gently. "He was told only that you needed protection. He's loved you as his own, and that love is real and true. Nothing about your relationship with him changes. But my sisters are his true daughters, which is why they were so cruel. They sensed, perhaps, that you were different, that you didn't truly belong to their family. Children sense these things, even when they don't understand them." The fairy stepped closer to Beauty. "You have a choice now. You can return to the merchant's family, live out your life as his daughter, or you can claim your birthright, become who you truly are. Beauty looked at the prince, the beast who had become a man. She looked at the transformed castle, now filled with life and light. She looked at the fairy, waiting for her answer. "What about him?" Beauty asked, nodding toward the prince. "What happens to him?" The prince smiled. "If you'll still have me, I'd like to marry you. If not as a beast, then as a man. If not out of pity, then out of love. Will you marry me, Beauty, truly and freely?" Beauty thought about her options. She could return to the cottage, to poverty and hard work and sisters who hated her, or she could stay here in this magical castle with a man she loved who loved her in return. It wasn't really a choice at all. "Yes," Beauty said, "I'll marry you." The prince pulled her into his arms and kissed her. And this time, it was a proper kiss. No monstrous features, no horrible appearance to overcome. Just two people who loved each other, finally together. Around them, the castle's inhabitants cheered. The wedding was planned for the following week. The castle was alive with preparations, feasts being organized, decorations being hung, invitations being sent to kingdoms near and far. The prince, whose name Beauty learned was Philippe, spent every moment he could with Beauty. He showed her the castle in its restored state, introduced her to his now visible servants, told her stories about his life before the curse. "How long were you cursed?" Beauty asked one evening as they walked through the gardens. 10 years, Philippe said. "I was 17 when the evil fairy cursed me. I've been a beast for a decade, waiting for someone who could love me despite my appearance." "What did you do to anger her?" Philippe looked uncomfortable. "She came to my castle, disguised as a beggar woman. She asked for shelter, for food. I turned her away. I was young, arrogant, cruel. I judged her by her appearance and found her unworthy of my hospitality. So she cursed you to be judged by appearance as you had judged her." "Exactly. The curse could only be broken by someone who loved me despite how I looked. Someone who could see the person inside the monster." He squeezed Beauty's hand. "Someone like you." "I didn't love you at first," Beauty admitted. "I was terrified of you, revolted by you. I know. I saw it in your eyes every night at dinner. Every time you looked at me, I saw the horror, the disgust, but I also saw you fighting it, trying to see past it. That meant more to me than easy love from someone who only saw the prince." A week before the wedding, the good fairy appeared again. "There's a matter we must settle," she said. "Your sisters." Beauty's stomach sank. My sisters. I'd almost forgotten. She'd been so wrapped up in happiness, in love, in her new life, that she hadn't thought about her family, about her father and brothers who must be worried sick, about her sisters who had manipulated her into breaking her promise. "They acted out of malice," the fairy said. "They deliberately deceived you, deliberately caused you to break your word. They hoped the beast would die and you could return home permanently, bringing his treasures with you." "How do you know that?" Beauty asked. "I know everything that happens in my domain. I saw their plot. I heard their whispers. The fairy's expression was stern. Such wickedness cannot go unpunished." "Please," Beauty said quickly. "They're my sisters." "Don't hurt them. I won't hurt them. But I will teach them a lesson." The fairy raised her hand. In the courtyard below, 2 figures materialized. Beauty's sisters, looking confused and frightened. They looked up and saw Beauty standing with the fairy and the prince. "Beauty," the eldest called. "What's happening? Where are we?" The fairy descended to the courtyard, and Beauty and Philippe followed. "You deceived your sister," the fairy said to the two girls. "You manipulated her into breaking an oath. You wanted her to suffer so you could profit. Such cruelty deserves consequences." "We didn't mean," the second sister started. "Don't lie. I know the truth of your hearts." The fairy's voice was cold. "You will remain here at this castle, but not as guests, not as family." She gestured, and magic swirled around the two sisters. They screamed as their bodies began to change. Their skin hardened, turned grey. Their features froze mid-expression, mouths open in cries of dismay, eyes wide with shock. In moments, they had transformed into stone statues. "No!" Beauty cried. "Don't kill them!" "They're not dead," the fairy said. "They're frozen, conscious, aware, but unable to move or speak. They'll stand here at the gates of the castle as guardians. They'll watch your happiness, watch your wedding, watch the life you build with the prince. And perhaps, after years or decades or centuries of watching the joy you found through kindness, they'll learn what they lacked." "Can they ever be freed?" Beauty asked. "When they learn true virtue, when their hearts change and they feel genuine remorse for their cruelty, then and only then will they transform back." The fairy looked at the statues. "It may happen in a year. It may happen in 1,000 years. It depends entirely on them." Beauty approached her sister's frozen forms. They looked terrified, their stone faces locked in expressions of fear. She felt pity for them, despite everything they'd done. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the statues. "I wish you'd been kinder. I wish we could have been true sisters." But the statues couldn't respond. They could only stand there, silent and still, eternal witnesses to their own cruelty. The merchant and Beauty's brothers arrived the next day, brought by the fairy's magic. Her father wept when he saw her. "I thought you were dead. When you didn't come back after 7 days, I thought the beast had killed you." "I'm sorry, father. I should have sent word, but I'm safe. I'm happy. And," Beauty smiled, "I'm getting married." She introduced them to Philippe, told them the whole story of the curse and its breaking. The merchant was amazed. Her brothers were delighted. "A prince," her father said, shaking his head in wonder. "My little Beauty is marrying a prince." "There's more," Beauty said gently, and she told him what the fairy had revealed, about her true parentage, about being hidden with his family as a baby. The merchant listened in silence. When she finished, he pulled her into a tight embrace. "You'll always be my daughter," he said fiercely. "I don't care whose blood runs in your veins. I raised you. I love you. You're mine. And you'll always be my father," Beauty assured him. The fairy provided wealth for the merchant and Beauty's brothers, estates, titles, everything they needed to live comfortably. They would stay near the castle, would visit often, would be part of Beauty's new life. The wedding was magnificent. Nobles from across the kingdom attended. The castle was decorated with flowers and lights. Musicians played, servants prepared elaborate feasts. Beauty wore a gown of white silk and lace, with a crown of roses in her hair. Philippe wore royal garments, looking every inch the prince he was. They were married in the castle's chapel, with the good fairy presiding over the ceremony. And when Philippe kissed his bride, the assembled crowd cheered. The celebration lasted for days, dancing, feasting, joy spreading throughout the kingdom. The cursed prince was restored, the castle was alive again, and everyone rejoiced. Beauty danced with her new husband under the stars. They walked through the rose garden, now bursting with blooms of every color. They talked and laughed and planned their future together. "Are you happy?" Philippe asked. "More than I ever thought possible," Beauty said honestly. "When I came here months ago, I thought I was coming to die. I never imagined I'd find love. Find myself. I waited 10 years for you," Philippe said. 10 years as a monster, hoping someone would see past my appearance. It was worth it. Every moment of suffering was worth it to find you. They kissed in the garden, surrounded by roses, while invisible servants, no longer invisible, celebrated nearby. At the gates, 2 stone statues stood watch, Beauty's sisters, frozen in time, witnessing the happiness they tried to destroy. Perhaps one day they'd learn. Perhaps one day they'd be freed. But tonight, Beauty didn't think about them. She thought only about her prince, her love, her new life. She'd come to the castle as a prisoner. She was leaving as a queen. And somewhere in the forest, in a cottage far away, her father slept peacefully for the first time in months. His daughter was alive. His daughter was happy. His daughter had found her fairy tale ending. Now that we've experienced the full dark tale of Beauty and the Beast, the monstrous beast, the haunted castle, the psychological terror, the curse and transformation, you're probably asking yourself, who wrote this? What kind of mind creates a story about a girl imprisoned by a serpent-bodied monster who asks her to marry him every single night? Let me introduce you to Gabrielle-Suzanne Barbot de Villeneuve. She was born in 1695 in Paris into a relatively prosperous family. She married young, as all women of her class did, but her husband died, leaving her a young widow. This was actually a moment of strange freedom for her. As a widow, she had social rights that unmarried women and wives didn't have. She could own property, conduct business, and most importantly, she could write and publish under her own name. Villeneuve moved to Paris and became part of the literary salon culture that dominated 18th century France. These were gatherings where educated people, mostly aristocrats, would meet to discuss philosophy, politics, literature, and art. Women played a significant role in these salons, hosting them, shaping them, participating as equals with men. It was in this world that Villeneuve began writing. She wrote novels, including Beauty and the Beast, which was published in 1740 as part of a collection called La Jeune Américaine et les Contes Marins, the Young American and Marine Tales. The original story was 187 pages long, not a short fairy tale, but a full novella. It was complex, with elaborate backstories for every character, detailed descriptions of the fairy world, political intrigue between fairy courts, and philosophical discussions about the nature of virtue and appearance. The story we know today, the simplified version, didn't come from Villeneuve. That came 16 years later, in 1756, when another French writer named Jean-Marie Le Prince de Beaumont took Villeneuve's novella and shortened it dramatically. She cut it down to about 20 pages, removed all the complex fairy politics, simplified the plot, and turned it into a children's moral tale. That's the version that became famous. That's the version that spread across Europe, that was translated into dozens of languages, that inspired films and plays, and eventually Disney. Villeneuve's original was mostly forgotten. For over 200 years, most people didn't even know it existed. Only recently have scholars rediscovered it and begun studying it as a separate, more complex work. So what was Villeneuve trying to do with this story? Why did she write it? To understand Beauty and the Beast, you have to understand what marriage meant for women in 1740s France. Young women had no choice in who they married. None. Their fathers or male guardians arranged marriages based on political alliances, financial considerations, and social status. A girl might meet her future husband once before the wedding, or she might not meet him at all until the ceremony. And these weren't marriages between young people of similar ages. Often, young women, girls as young as 14 or 15, were married to men much older. Men in their 30s, 40s, 50s, even older. Men who were essentially strangers. The wedding night was terrifying for these young brides. They were expected to submit to sexual intimacy with men they didn't know, didn't love, and often found repulsive, and there was no escape. Once married, a woman was her husband's property. She had no legal rights, no way to leave, no recourse if he was cruel. This was the universal experience of aristocratic women in the 18th century France. Now read Beauty and the Beast again with that in mind. Beauty is forced to leave her home and go live with a stranger, a monstrous stranger who makes her physically ill to look at. She has to dine with him every night, be close to him, interact with him intimately, and every night he asks her to marry him, to make their arrangement permanent, to bind herself to him forever. At first, she's repulsed, terrified. She wants to run away but can't. She's trapped. But over time, she gets to know him. She discovers that beneath the hideous appearance is intelligence, kindness, consideration. He treats her well. He gives her freedom within her captivity. He never forces himself on her, and eventually she learns to love him, not despite his appearance, but by seeing past it to his true character. This was the story that 18th century aristocratic women needed to hear, because they were all going to end up in Beauty's situation. They were all going to be forced into close quarters with men they found frightening or repulsive. They were all going to have to find a way to survive, to cope, to maybe even find happiness in situations they couldn't control. Beauty and the Beast told them, look for the person inside. Don't judge by appearance. A man who seems monstrous might actually be kind. You might learn to love what you first feared. It was a survival guide disguised as a fairy tale. Was this problematic? Absolutely. The story essentially tells women to accept their captivity, to make the best of being prisoners, to learn to love their jailers. But Villeneuve was writing in a time when women had no power to change their circumstances. She couldn't tell women to rebel, to refuse marriage, to demand freedom, because those options didn't exist. All she could do was offer a framework for survival. Find the good in your situation. Look for kindness where you can. Build a life within the constraints you're given. It's deeply uncomfortable from a modern perspective, but it reflected the brutal reality of the 18th century women's lives. So what does the Beast represent? On the most obvious level, He represents the unknown husband, the stranger that young women were forced to marry, the man whose appearance and behavior were mysteries until after the wedding, when it was too late to escape. But there's more to it than that. The beast's appearance is specifically designed to be sexually threatening. The serpent body has obvious phallic symbolism. The elephant trunk, the tusks, the claws, these are all aggressive, penetrative features. The beast is a walking symbol of male sexuality and power. Beauty's physical revulsion when she looks at him, the nausea, the fear, mirrors what many young brides felt about sexual intimacy. They'd been raised in extreme modesty, taught nothing about sex, except that it was shameful and dangerous. The wedding night was traumatic for many of them, the beast asking, "Will you marry me?" Every night is the equivalent of a husband demanding his marital rights. The question Beauty faces, do I consent to this? Do I accept this? Was the question countless women faced every night in loveless marriages. The story offers a fantasy solution. If you're patient enough, kind enough, dutiful enough, your beast will transform into a prince. Your husband will turn out to be good and handsome and worthy of love. But note, beauty doesn't change the beast through her love. The curse was always temporary. The beast was always going to transform back into a prince. He just needed someone to love him first. The transformation isn't real growth or change, it's revelation. The prince was there all along, hidden under the curse. This was the comforting lie women were told. Your husband isn't really a monster. He just seems that way at first. Once you know him better, you'll see the good man underneath. Sometimes that was true. Sometimes arranged marriages did develop into genuine partnerships, into love. But often, it wasn't true. Often the beast stayed a beast. Often there was no prince underneath, just a cruel or indifferent or abusive man. But you couldn't put that in a fairy tale. You couldn't tell women, you're probably stuck with a monster for life and there's nothing you can do about it. So you told them about beauty and the beast instead, and you hoped it would help them survive. But Villeneuve wasn't just writing a marriage survival guide. She was also creating entertainment for salon audiences who loved Gothic horror and supernatural tales. The early 18th century saw the birth of Gothic literature. Stories featuring haunted castles, curses, dark magic, mysterious transformations, and psychological terror. Horace Walpole's The Castle of Otranto, considered the first Gothic novel, was published in 1764, but the genre's elements were already present in earlier works, including Villeneuve's Beauty and the Beast. Look at the Gothic elements in the story. The castle that appears from nowhere in the forest, glowing with light, but empty of visible inhabitants. This is classic Gothic, the impossible architecture, the eerie isolation, the sense that the building itself is alive and watching. The invisible servants. Nothing is more unsettling than feeling hands on your body that you cannot see, hearing voices from nowhere, being surrounded by presences that exist but remain hidden. This is pure supernatural horror. The locked room, beauty is forbidden to enter. Gothic literature is obsessed with locked rooms, with forbidden spaces, with secrets that must be kept. The locked room represents the unknowable, the mystery at the heart of the castle, the curse that transformed the prince and his entire household. Dark magic, evil fairies, transformation into monsters. These are folkloric elements, but Villeneuve uses them with Gothic atmosphere. The nightly ritual of the beast asking for marriage, beauty refusing, and the beast leaving in anguish. The repetition creates a sense of being trapped in a loop, unable to escape a pattern, which is psychologically disturbing. The dream sequences with the mysterious prince, the blurring of dream and reality, the sense that beauty is being called to by something she can't quite reach. This adds to the surreal, unsettling atmosphere. Beauty's isolation. She's completely alone except for the beast. No human contact, no companionship, no one to talk to about her fears and confusion. Isolation is one of the most effective horror elements, and Villeneuve uses it extensively. The dying garden, the fading magic, the beast close to death when beauty returns. The sense of entropy, of everything falling apart, of running out of time, this creates tension and dread. For Villeneuve's salon audience, these Gothic elements made the story entertaining, not just instructive. It wasn't just, here's how to cope with marriage. It was, here's a dark, atmospheric tale full of magic and mystery and romance. The horror makes the eventual happy ending more satisfying. The darker the journey, the brighter the destination. There's one more crucial element we need to discuss: the revelation that beauty is secretly a princess. This is deeply problematic from a modern perspective, but it was standard for 18th century literature. Throughout the story, beauty demonstrates virtue. She's kind, hard-working, humble, intelligent, loving. Meanwhile, her sisters, raised in the same household, are cruel, lazy, vain, and selfish. In a modern story, this would be attributed to personality, to choices, to individual character development. But Villeneuve's story reveals that beauty is virtuous because she's secretly of royal fairy blood. She's not really the merchant's daughter. She's a princess. Her goodness comes from her noble breeding. The sisters, meanwhile, are truly the merchant's daughters. And they're awful because they're common-born. This reflects 18th century aristocratic ideology. Noble people are noble not just in rank, but in character. Virtue is inherited through bloodlines. Common people might try to be good, but they'll always be limited by their inferior breeding. This is, obviously, classist propaganda designed to justify aristocratic power. But it was standard thinking in Villeneuve's time. The revelation that beauty is secretly royal serves multiple purposes in the story. First, it explains why she could break the curse. Only someone with fairy blood could do it, not because of any choice or action on beauty's part, but because of what she inherently is. Second, it makes the marriage between beauty and the prince socially acceptable. A merchant's daughter marrying a prince would be scandalous, but a hidden princess marrying a prince is perfectly appropriate. Third, it provides a wish fulfillment fantasy for Villeneuve's aristocratic female readers. They could imagine that they too might be secretly special, secretly royal, secretly destined for something greater than their current circumstances. The merchant gets to keep beauty as his daughter emotionally, which is nice. But legally, socially, she ascends to her true position in the hierarchy. This is all very uncomfortable for modern readers, who reject the idea that some people are inherently better than others based on birth. But it's crucial to understanding what Villeneuve was doing and who she was writing for. So why does this story still resonate nearly 300 years later? Partly because the core idea, looking beyond appearance to see true character, is genuinely valuable. In a world that emphasizes physical beauty and superficial qualities, the message to value kindness, intelligence, and integrity over appearance is worth preserving, partly because the imagery is so powerful. The beast, the enchanted castle, the rose, the transformation. These are memorable, iconic images that capture the imagination, partly because every generation reshapes the story to address its own concerns. We've removed the most problematic elements. The captivity is softened, beauty's agency is increased, the classism is downplayed, while keeping the emotional core. Disney's 1991 version completely reimagined the story. Their Belle is confident, independent, loves reading, rejects the handsome but awful Gaston, and chooses the Beast because she sees his character development. The Beast has to earn her love through genuine change. It's a much healthier dynamic than the original, but even Disney couldn't completely escape the original DNA. Belle is still a prisoner. She still develops feelings for her captor. The Stockholm Syndrome is still there, just dressed up in better music and more appealing animation. We keep trying to fix Beauty and the Beast because we recognize there's something valuable in it, something worth saving. But we also recognize there's something troubling in it, something that needs to be addressed. The story endures because it speaks to something primal, the hope that love can transform ugliness into beauty, that what seems monstrous might actually be misunderstood, that patience and kindness can reveal hidden goodness. Whether that hope is justified or just wishful thinking depends on your perspective and on which version of the story you're reading. We've journeyed through the complete, original tale of Beauty and the Beast, as written by Gabrielle-Suzanne Barbot de Villeneuve in 1740. We've met Beauty, not the confident Disney heroine, but a young woman trapped by circumstances beyond her control, forced to live with a creature that made her physically ill to look at. We've explored the enchanted castle, not filled with singing teacups, but with invisible spirits, whispered voices, and Gothic atmosphere. A place that was both prison and paradise, luxurious and terrifying. We've encountered the Beast, truly monstrous, with a serpent body and elephant trunk and terrible fangs. A creature who asked Beauty every single night to marry him, who let her leave knowing she might never return, who nearly died from her broken promise. We've watched the transformation, the curse breaking, the Beast becoming the prince he'd always been underneath, the revelation that Beauty's dream prince and her monstrous captor were the same person. We've witnessed the sisters' punishment, transformed into conscious stone statues, forced to watch Beauty's happiness for eternity as payment for their cruelty. And we've understood why this story exists, as a survival guide for women facing arranged marriages, as Gothic entertainment for salon audiences, as aristocratic propaganda about noble bloodlines, as wish fulfillment fantasy for women with limited power. This story is stranger, darker, more complex than Disney ever showed us. The original Beauty and the Beast is a 187-page novella full of fairy politics, philosophical discussions, psychological horror, and problematic messages about accepting your captivity and learning to love your jailer. It reflects the brutal reality of the 18th century women's lives. They had no choice in marriage. They were forced to live with men who were essentially strangers, who had complete power over them, who they might find repulsive or frightening. Villeneuve couldn't tell them to rebel. She couldn't tell them to refuse. She could only tell them, look for the good where you can find it. Learn to see past appearance to character. Find ways to survive within the constraints imposed on you. It's a survival strategy, not a love story. Modern versions have tried to fix this. They've added agency for Beauty, genuine character growth for Beast, removal of the captivity elements, emphasis on choice and consent. We've tried to salvage the good parts while discarding the troubling parts. But the original remains dark, strange, gothic, problematic, and fascinating. The invisible servants were genuinely creepy. The Beast was genuinely monstrous. Beauty's captivity was genuine imprisonment, no matter how gilded the cage. And the happy ending, transformation, revelation, marriage, and happily ever after, doesn't erase the months of psychological horror that came before it. This is the real Beauty and the Beast. Not a Disney musical, not a simple moral tale about looking past appearances, but a complex, dark, gothic horror story about survival, about finding humanity in the monstrous, about women making the best of situations they couldn't control. The roses in the garden bloom eternal. The castle stands in the forest, magical and impossible. And somewhere, 2 stone statues guard the gates, watching and waiting and perhaps, someday, learning. This is what fairy tales looked like before we sanitized them for children. This is what women in the 18th century told each other about marriage, survival, and love. This is the original nightmare hiding beneath the dream. If you want to see more dark fairy tale origins, more gothic horror from history, more truth behind the stories we think we know, subscribe to the Midnight Archives. Like this video. Share it with anyone interested in the real history of fairy tales. And in the comments, tell me, what do you think of the original story? Does knowing the historical context change how you see Beauty and the Beast? Would you have chosen to stay in the castle? Thank you for witnessing this tale. Thank you for not looking away from the darkness at the heart of our most beloved stories. The Beast is waiting in his castle. The rose garden blooms with impossible flowers. And Beauty must decide. Will she see the monster or the man? Maybe the answer is that she must see both, and somehow love them anyway. That's the truth at the heart of Beauty and the Beast.